Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar now claims she never wanted or needed dragon gas after having spent almost $1 million of Trinidad and Tobago taxpayers' money into an OFAC license that will expire without being used. All Venezuela wanted was peace in the Caribbean, which is the position of all other CARICOM countries. And many people in both Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela have been working during the last month trying to save Dragon gas deal and trying to open avenues of understanding between our governments and populations. However, it has been impossible as the United States ship Gravely continues in port of Spain. Military exercises could have been conducted in the Atlantic coast of Trinidad or in the northern coast, closer to Tobago. It was not necessary to be so close to the international border of Venezuela. We cannot accept such a provocation after having Donald Trump threatened us about CIA agents. Venezuelan domestic security has tightened. President Nicolás Maduro was supposed to concede an interview to United States television network CBS. However, such interview was denied by the Venezuelan Ministry of Defense on the grounds that such an interview would not be secure anymore. Venezuelan gas exploration, however, must be reassessed. And since Dragon and Patao gas exploration at this moment is not suitable, Venezuela might find it attractive to go back to domestic gas fields, such as Pedernales in Delta Amacuro State, which is in mainland Venezuela, facing the Atlantic Ocean. It is a legacy petroleum and gas field which still has some recovery potential, and upgrading its infrastructure would provide a convenient stepping ground for developing Plataforma Deltana. Partnerships with colleagues from Eurasia would be enhanced for developing Pedernales and Plataforma Deltana. CARICOM is at great risk. Rift provoked by Trinidad and Tobago is significant, while Grenada and St. Vincent and the Grenadines continue being harassed by United States. Prime Minister of Grenada still has not announced a decision on letting the United States install radars at St. George's Airport, while parachutes have been spotted around St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Prime Minister Mia from Barbados continues stressing out the need of peace. However, her voice sounds increasingly lonely. Caribbean security is necessary and cannot be provided by the United States, as United States security is a direct threat against Venezuela. Venezuela continues strengthening relations with the Russian Federation. President Vladimir Putin signed the Strategic partnership between Russia and Venezuela, which was already approved by the Venezuelan National Assembly, by President Nicolás Maduro, by the Russian Duma, and by the Russian Senate. With Vladimir Putin's signature, the agreement goes in full effect. Yesterday, a huge military aircraft from Russia arrived into Simón Bolívar Airport in Maiquetía, La Guaira State. Advanced Russian military equipment of various nature is presumed to have arrived in such military cargo plane from Russia. United States narrative seems to be shifting into asking President Maduro to leave power as he could be assassinated, while Venezuelan people and Venezuelan government have invited United States to invade, as we are ready to receive them with our military Venezuelan capabilities. It would be more prudent for United States authorities to act more and speak less. It sounds like United States is trying to instill fear so that they don't have to use their military equipment. The arrival of United States ship Gerald Ford is expected within 2 weeks, so there is a long time for preparing for such arrival, and we will monitor change of conditions during the next few days. The emphasis during the last weekend has been conclusively solving the impasse with Trinidad and Tobago by completely suspending our gas arrangement, which had started in 2015 and was automatically renewed in 2025. However, Venezuela is using a clause of termination if feasible. Venezuela, unfortunately, cannot do business with a country that is hosting hostile armies pointing towards aggression into Venezuela. Grenada also has gas fields, and it would be wonderful if they could be developed along with Venezuela. However, the attitude of Prime Minister of Grenada of taking too long to decide where Grenada's interests are, that means, will Grenada fall prey to United States imperialism, or will Grenada, along with Venezuela, Barbados, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Jamaica, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia and Dominica, strive for a united Caribbean? Belize is a Central American country which is very far away from the rest of the Caribbean. They have Spanish lookout oil fields, an impressive tourism potential, and its support to Venezuela is appreciated, just as Guatemala on many occasions has supported Guyana. Countries of the Caribbean need to mesh even further, while United States tries to divide us to conquer. We have got to a situation where Trinidad and Tobago gets armed by the United States, while Venezuela gets armed by Russia, China, and Iran. The best case scenario would be that whenever political conditions improve, Venezuela and Trinidad and Tobago engage in a common Caribbean defense strategy with a harmonization of different military equipment from United States, Russia, China, and Iran together to defend our common Caribbean Sea as our sphere of influence. Venezuelan economy, of course, is not doing well. The valuation of the bolivar, our national currency, has accelerated. Every day, the dollar is more costly than it was the day before. Sanctions are biting. Petroleum extracted by Chevron is not paid for in hard currency. And while some macroeconomic figures look good on paper, Venezuelan businesses and individuals continue struggling. This economic war is intended to promote people to protest. However, people have already learned that economic troubles by design are imposed by United States so that we claudicate and accept any puppet government that they would like to impose upon us. United States is not interested in Venezuelan democracy. United States is interested in Venezuelan oil, gas, gold, and uranium. Once upon a time, I thought that privatization of our Venezuelan petroleum industry was desirable, as some extraction methods could be quicker. Nowadays, I no longer support privatization of Venezuelan oil industry. PDVSA must remain our flagship petroleum company with joint ventures from across the world. For the most part, our trading partners are from the Asian continent, as many South American and Caribbean potential partners are threatened by the United States of secondary sanctions. United States is too interested in Nicolas Maduro stepping out of power, and such emphasis of the United States of a regime change is actually entrenching Nicolas Maduro, as Nicolas Maduro has become a symbol of Venezuelan resiliency and Venezuelan self-determination. It will be a Venezuelan achievement to improve our economy with opening to new markets, replacing imports from United States, as already is happening with NAFTA. Heavy crude is now being processed with Russian NAFTA rather than American NAFTA. We don't even need the United States for English courses, as we have a variety of English-speaking countries next door. Venezuelans are well aware that the United States may strike. Many of us might die. Many might survive. Colombia seems on a good path of unity with Venezuela. Brazil timidly is also providing diplomatic support, while Mexico increasingly gets threatened by the United States as well. The balance of power in South America and the Caribbean will be chaotic, as some countries will defend the United States, other countries will defend Caribbean and South American sovereignty, while diplomacy is not being given a chance, as reflected by Trinidad and Tobago Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Besasar, who was boasting of Dragon Gas deal, OFAC license, and now says that such deal is not important. Donald Trump is in Asian countries. He doesn't seem to be doing much there. Foreign trips of Donald Trump tend to be quite ceremonial. Opaque deals are signed, and once Donald Trump leaves those countries, they continue engaging in trade against themselves, bypassing United States. It will be necessary to wait until Donald Trump arrives back into America to have further clues on what will happen with Venezuela war. It looks like Venezuela will hastily deploy for defensive purposes all the equipment yesterday received from Russia. Our missiles, boats, aircraft, and air defense systems are calibrated daily in expectation of first offensive strike from the United States, which might come from either Trinidad and Tobago or Puerto Rico or Panama or the USS Gravely once it gets into the vicinity, which will be during the next few weeks. Meanwhile, United States officials continue suggesting President Nicolás Maduro to leave power. However, Venezuelans are proud of Nicolás Maduro government and the efficient strategies of Ministers Diosdado Cabello and Padrino Lopez, who have enhanced a perfect military, police, popular unity for defending our country. Most English speakers unfamiliar with Venezuela might see in social media an emphasis on terrorist propaganda of Venezuelans asking for regime change. Many of them are exiles who don't like their country and would like their country to be invaded. It has been necessary to promote a systematic revocation of Venezuelan nationality to those people, which is a less severe punishment than just executing them for treason to the homeland, as happens in fascist dictatorships such as the United States or Nazi Germany. Colombian primaries of the successor of President Gustavo Petro have been completed with the victory of candidate Cepeda, who will now be trained as the continuity of Gustavo Petro's constituent proposal for enhancing unity with Venezuela. United States bases are expected to be declared unlawful. United States bases in Colombia are expected to be declared unnecessary, and President Petro might ask United States military to remove soldiers and military equipment out of Colombia soon, as similar steps are being made in Colombia just as in Venezuela. We have been dismantling Dragon gas deal as the terms of trade offered by Trinidad and Tobago and OFAC pretension of not paying Venezuela with cash were deemed unacceptable. Colombia would not like to invade Venezuela with United States military equipment, and Gustavo Petro is conscious that United States equipment within Colombia might attempt against his life, just as it happened in Panama in 1989 when they had the Panama Canal Zone and various military bases which all promoted regime change in Panama, concluding in ousting President Noriega out of power. Therefore, it will be convenient for Colombia to close out military bases in Colombia. Ecuador might place those military bases in Ecuadorian soil if the population of Ecuador so decides. Argentina just held elections, and by a slight difference, the governing party of Javier Milei won seats of the National Assembly. However, none of the parties received absolute majority. Most Latin American countries seem in a huge polarization promoted by United States, exacerbating carrot and stick strategies. It is unclear how long we will stay in this situation. United States military, for the time being, is being paid for by ultra-rich donors who are probably engaged in arms weapons traffic, and they need wars to break out so that they can sell weapons. While a strong opposition is being seen in New York mayor elections, where Mandani, a highly progressive candidate, is expected to win, offering a fresh opposition figure to Donald Trump's regime in his home city of New York. New York City is still the headquarters of the United Nations, and it is likely that countries around the world will continue arrangements for taking United Nations out of New York City into a new headquarters such as Qatar, because United States is no longer guaranteeing diplomatic immunity and passage to delegations of Palestine or to the Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro. United States has applied wars against Iran, against Iraq, against Palestine, against Libya, against Afghanistan, against Vietnam, against Korea, in addition to numerous regime change operations in most Latin American and Caribbean countries. United States is not suitable for continuity of its United Nations headquarters because the home advantage of United States is unfair for countries such as Venezuela, which are finding it increasingly difficult to make their voices heard. For that reason, Russia and China are suggesting to amplify the number of permanent members at the United Nations Security Council. However, the General Assembly should take a step further and require United Nations to move out of New York City into another country which is perceived more neutral. We would like to spare the world from World War III. We would like the Caribbean to continue being a zone of peace. However, it looks likely that war will emerge as diplomatic efforts by Venezuela are constantly ridiculed by Donald Trump's regime, while Venezuelan expatriate media is wealthy. They can hire many bots, as they are technologically proficient for doing so, and algorithms in social media punish progressive pacifist voices while they amplify fascism Nazism, and warmongering, because conflict is marketable and promotes likes, views, and subscriptions into social media. Nevertheless, Venezuela will continue offering peace. We will continue stoically receiving provocations while we are ready to retaliate once there is conclusive evidence that United States military forces have already entered our territory. In the meantime, CIA agents are being discovered in Venezuela territory, and of course they will be arrested. Trinidad and Tobago fishermen who come fish next to Venezuela waters must understand that Venezuelan military has the obligation of not letting them in, as we are strengthening our immigration operatives in search of CIA agents that could have been transported in recent visit of USS Gravely into Port of Spain. Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar of Trinidad and Tobago will now initiate procedures for gas supplies from elsewhere, as unfortunately she never wanted to dialogue with Venezuela. And the same will happen to Donald Trump as he seeks to loot Venezuelan heavy oil and conventional oil fields, but his military will probably fail, as the only way to oust Maduro or to impose a puppet regime in our country would be at the expense of a lot of American blood, which the United States public opinion will certainly not be willing to tolerate.